morning, good evening, and good afternoon to viewers from all walks of life. This is Denzamos, and welcome into the channel of truth, enlightenment, freedom, and the channel of breaking empaths free. If it's your first time here and narcissism resonates with you, I encourage you to join our community of empaths, like our page, share and subscribe. And of course, that's if narcissism resonates with you. And for those that have always been with me, you are welcome back, and I thank you for your continued love and support. Now, you might see me looking around, guys, because I've got a very heightened sense of, I'm very highly sensitive. The journey of awakening makes the empaths very, very highly sensitive. So we can pick up on different things. So sometimes you might have noticed in my videos, I'm just looking all over the place. It's just because I'm picking up on, I can usually pick up on different energies. And it's nothing to worry about. And at the same time, I'm in the park, so there could be dogs even just sneaking up behind my back even without noticing. And I just want to make sure that I don't look around and there's a dog behind my back. So, but anyhow, you're all welcome anyway, guys. And I'm so glad to be with you today. I've been off for a while because my daughter is off and she has got a couple of holidays. So I had to babysit my daughter for 2 days, stay with her and get, share some good time together. Anyhow, what are you going to see when the narcissist meets dead end? I'm going to explain to you in this video exactly how you're going to spot the moment of self-destruction, because at the end of the day, the narcissist, they're going to self-destruct. I'm going to put a link in the video below. I'm going to put a link in the description below. I made a video a couple of months ago, somewhere last year, and I mentioned in that video that the narcissist is going to self-destruct. I did that video before, and I'm going to put a link, but in this video, we are going to talk about how are you going to actually identify that the narcissist has reached self-destruction mode. You see, on 5D state of consciousness, a person who is awakened and they have ascended to some degree, there is things that they can see that other people cannot see. So, like me, for example, we can just be in a situation somewhere, and I can see many things that other people cannot see. It's just because I have got a heightened sense of, I'm very awakened. I'm very, very much awakened. And we can be in a group, and I will see even the smallest details of the things that other people will not see around me, but I will be able to see those things. And most of the cases, that is actually what has helped me to, most of all, protect myself from these energy vampires. Most of the cases where when I met them, whenever they were, wherever they were, I would simply identify them, and I would walk the opposite way. Or even sometimes when they tried to get into contact with me, I would block their energy, and I would never allow them to carry on with whatever it is they're plotting to do. So what I'm trying to say here is that there was a video that made rounds on social media. That was a couple of months ago. It could have been like last year. Towards the end of last year, there's a video that made rounds on social media. There was an old woman in a care home who was spitting at a care worker. Now, this woman was standing next to the care worker, the lady who was working in that care home, and she was spitting in her face continuously. That video made rounds on social media, but actually you could be surprised that mainstream media never came out to publicly talk about this, what exactly was going on in this place. So this is the reason why you see most of the times these things have been happening in open sight. They have been happening. These guys have been doing things in open sight, and then for some reason mainstream media hasn't come out to really help the people to identify that these individuals, that these are narcissists, these are sociopaths, or these are psychopaths, this is what they are doing. Sometimes you hear things like, okay, so probably the woman was a racist. Some people will come out and say, now the people on that dimension, the 3D state of awareness, state of consciousness, they will come out to the public and tell the world that that woman was a racist. On my level of consciousness, on the 5D state of consciousness and awareness, I definitely know that person was a narcissist. But mainstream media, for one reason, it could be one reason they don't understand what was going on, or it could be the second that they're trying to cover up the whole story and they don't want the public to know what was going on in that care home. The woman was recorded spitting in the face of a care home worker, a person who was actually even taking care of her in the first place. So there's also another video about, there's a channel called Pink Girl Teaches. And I'm really proud of her. She has very, very good content. You guys, you can always go on to to her page and check out her videos. She talked about the final days of the narcissist, what usually happens, because she's a nurse. So she has seen most of these incidents, what is happening in the care homes, in those elderly, the nurses who have like aged out, and they're like they have come face to face with their last days, or with their final days. So that video was also quite very interesting. If I find the link, I'm also going to put that video in the description below. You guys might want to look at that video, especially for those of you who are working in care homes, who are working with the elderly. You are going to meet a lot of narcissists. So most of those narcissists who are being taken care of in the care homes, they have already been abandoned by their family. Their families don't want to know anything about them. They have already dumped them in the care homes, and they have all disappeared and forgotten about them. So nobody wants to go there and visit them. Nobody wants to call them, because they have made people's lives a living hell, and their children, they have abandoned them. Their relatives abandoned them. Nobody wants to relate with them. So they have dumped them in the care homes, and the only people they have left to feed on, they're the care workers, the social workers who are actually taking care of the elderly. Those are the people who are left to suffer, to face that amount of humiliation and torture at the end of their lives. So they have been dumped in those care homes, and those are the people who are actually facing the wrath of the narcissist, the rage, the final rage of the narcissist. In this video, I want to make it very clear, people, during the final days of the narcissist, is not every narcissist is going to end up in a care home. There are some of them who will not even reach that stage. This is not all of them who will end up in a care home. There are some of them who will never reach that stage. I mean, like the old age. They will even not age, because at some point in time they are going to mess up with their life, and they are going to self-destruct, and that is going to be the end for them. In this video, people, I want to make it very clear, and I want to listen very carefully. There are some things you are going to see that are going to help you to identify that the narcissist has reached self-destructive mode. They have reached the end game, and they are in self-destruction mode. So whatever it is they are doing and what is going on around them, it is actually that whatever it is, that situation, that exact situation they are in, it is what is going to end their life at some point. They are in self-destruction mode, and they are going to be destroyed. Actually, they are going to destroy themselves, if I can use the word. They are going to self-destruct and self-implode. And usually this happens when there is a situation whereby the narcissist has run out of fuel. They have run out of fuel. There's nobody there to feed on. There's nobody to feed on. They are just somewhere hanging by themselves. There's nobody to talk to them. There's nobody to validate them. There's nobody to say anything. So they are just standing, hanging somewhere in the middle of the world, facing their own demons. That is usually when the narcissist will go into self-destruction mode. And you are going to see a lot of things. You see, in most of my videos, I've been mentioning many times that the narcissist, they are under demonic influence, and they are under influence of so many different types of spirits, demonic spirits that actually influencing them to do all these kind of things that they're doing to people, and to inflict harm and pain to people. You could find a narcissist, for example, they may have the spirit of usually they're harboring spirits of destruction. So you could find a narcissist who is a robber. You could find a narcissist who is also a murderer. You could find a narcissist who is a rapist. You could find a narcissist who is what can I call it? You could find a narcissist. You could find a narcissist who is into drugs, who is a drug addict. You could find a narcissist who is actually using drugs themselves. You could find a narcissist. So there are so many different types of spirits that are operating within the narcissist. The only difference is that you have usually heard about the word covert and overt narcissist. That is because that a narcissist can be able to hide these influences, these spirits that is operating within them. They can be able to hide them when they're with an empath, because for some reason the empath is like a cover-up. It's like you're able to cover these dark entities that are operating behind them. So when the narcissist is with you, is with the empath for this matter, it will be very difficult for you to see some of these things, because when they're in the public, when they're out there, it is very difficult to identify actually what is going on, what they are doing behind the scenes. Then you also have the narcissists who are overt. So it depends. These spirits will manifest differently depending on the strength of the narcissist. So if they find a person who is much more stronger, they'll operate covertly. And those are the cases whereby you've had modern psychology has been talking about covert narcissism. But when you find a person who is weaker and they cannot contain this energy, because those spirits have got another level of energy, that is when the narcissist will be overt. They cannot contain what they have inside. So all of a sudden show it out there in the public. You will just see it manifest in front of you, definitely, straight away. So that's why you see modern science has usually talked about the overt and the covert. That is because the spirits that are actually influencing those narcissists, there are some of those spirits that are operating within very weak narcissists. So it will be very obvious when you meet them, because they will be showing it out to the public straight away who they are. You will meet them and you know this person is a narcissist straight away. But most of the time you will find a narcissist who is actually a bit stronger than the other ones, and they can operate covertly. So they can actually hide those things within them, and the only thing they need is an empath to use as a life support and to cover up whatever demons it is that are operating behind them. So you will find the covert and the overt ones. Now, for the most of the narcissists, that's why most of the times on the social media pages we are talking about covert narcissism, because most of these demons, most of these spirits, they are operating within the narcissists who are actually very strong, and they can actually hide this identity for a very long period of time. The reason why you see most of it, even sometimes you find relationships lasting for 20 years. Somebody waking up after 20 years and realizing that actually for the all 10, 20 years of their lives, they have been sleeping, they have been living with the narcissist, and they could never even actually understand what they've been dealing with for all this time. That is because they were dealing with the covert narcissist, and for all these years they have been operating covertly. When the narcissist reaches the end of their life, it is usually going to happen that at some point there will be a point. The reason why we've been talking about supply, we've been talking about fuel and supply. The reason why the narcissist has got to be with an empath, it is an obligation, it is mandatory for them that they have got to be in touch with an empath, because it is the empath who is able to absorb these spirits, whatever it is, the attacks that are coming. It is only the empath who can take that level of energy. That is why I've always told the people in my videos, the empaths, you are a very rare and a very special breed. You are a very special breed, because those demons, when they are with you, you are able to absorb that level of energy. And the narcissists, they know this. They know that the empath has the ability to absorb that level of energy. So that's why you see when you're with them, they can do whatever it is they are doing. They can say whatever it is they want to say. They can act in any way. You will be there, you will wait for them, you will be patient with them, you will forgive them, you will excuse them. There will be all sorts of excuses because you want to make the thing work. So the empath is usually the narcissist life support. Should it happen in a way that the narcissist does not have fuel, they do not have an empath on the side. People, let me tell you this because I've seen it myself. At the moment, there's narcissists that I know they are in self-destruction mode. I've met these narcissists before in my life, and at the moment I know they have reached self-destruction mode. And whatever is going, it looks to me, I don't want to be the judge in this case, but it looks to me they have reached the dead end. They have hit dead end, they have hit rock bottom, and they have reached self-destruction mode. So what is going to happen is, like I've said, every narcissist harbors a different type of spirit. They have got a lot of them, but there's only one particular spirit that is going to influence them the most. So you can find a narcissist who is cheating, who is lying, who is doing this, who is doing, but at some point in time, they are very strongly addicted to drugs. You can find a narcissist who has these other different types of spirits and whatever, but at the end of the day, they are very much addicted to pornography. So there is one particular spirit that actually very strongly influences them. When the narcissist happens that they do not have a source of supply, they have lost all the fuel they can get, there's nobody else to feed on, there are no empaths around to be found. The narcissists, they're isolated and they're on their own. They are looking at themselves in the mirror and they are thinking about all this thing they have done to people. They are thinking about all this harm they have inflicted on people. They are thinking about themselves because, like I've said, the last thing the narcissist wants is to check themselves in the mirror because they cannot face the person, the reality of the people, of who they are. That's why they cannot face themselves in the mirror. So usually at the end of the game, at the end of it all, because everything has got a beginning and an end. When the narcissist reaches the end, what is going to happen is that they are going to manifest that spirit, exactly that spirit that has been influencing them the most. Because that spirit, remember, it has got nobody to feed on. There's nobody to feed on. You as the empath, you were the narcissist life support in the beginning. You were the person who was there for the narcissist from the beginning. So they could hide behind your shadow and could present themselves in the public as authentic and genuine. But at the end of the day, you are not there. You have left them. Why? The reason why I've given you, in the beginning of this video, I've given you an example of that woman who was spitting in the care home, who was spitting at a support worker, spitting in her face. That was an example of a narcissist who is actually old and they have reached dead end and there's nobody to feed on. Now the only thing they have got to do is to come out and start to attack the support workers, the people who are taking care of them. So those individuals, what will happen is that the demon which has usually strongly influenced the nurses for all their life, on top of these other small demons around them, there's a spirit that has very strongly captured that nurse's soul. That is the demon that is going to manifest. So, for example, you can find a situation whereby the nurses has run low on fuel. There's nobody to feed on. You are going to find them very strongly digging into pornography, very, very strongly digging into pornography, very strongly digging into. They are going to all of a sudden start. They could turn into robbers. You could find them actually. You see on the news they have caught them with a kid who is underage. They have caught them with a kid who is not mature enough. They have caught them stealing something. They have caught them. Maybe they have shot somebody on the way. Maybe they have stolen a car. You will find that spirit is going to manifest very strongly within that narcissist. The reason why I'm making this video is because I personally know a narcissist who is into self-destruction mode at the moment. And that is when that spirit is going to come out on the surface, because there is nobody to actually combat. There's nobody to absorb that level of energy. So what happens is that the narcissist starts to deal straight face-to-face with that demon inside them. They start to very strongly get influenced and be very much influenced with that demon that has always been hiding behind them, even if they were covered. But now at the end of the day, they are exposed because they are by themselves, and there's nobody there with them to validate them. Nobody's there to cover up. Nobody's there to combat and even sometimes to absorb that level of energy. So the only thing they have left to do, they're left with, is to face those demons face to face. And those demons are going to manifest people. They want it or they don't want it. But the only thing I can tell you people, when you have left a narcissist, and after a couple of years, months, or even sometimes years, you ever hear on the news that narcissist, that person you've left, they have been caught stealing, or maybe they have robbed the bank, they have been caught, maybe he has been caught with a weapon, he has been caught in a shootout, in a whatever, he has been caught stealing a car, they have been caught with a kid who is underage, they have been caught defiling somebody, they have been caught in a different kind of act. If you ever hear on the news, or a friend ever tells you that your ex-narcissist has been caught in such and such an incident, you have got to know that is exactly the spirit they have been embodying for all this time. It is that spirit now, it has started to manifest, because at the end of the day, they do not have anybody to validate them. They do not have cover-up. You have been the narcissist life support. You have been the cover-up for all these years. Now, at that point, there is nobody to cover that situation, and they are exposed in front of everybody. And they sometimes, like I've said, they don't know what is going on. They do not have control over this. Even if they want to control this, they cannot. They do not. For the most of you who have seen my previous video, I talked about this. They have not got control over this. You are the only person who used to control this situation, so that they could even sometimes operate covertly. And they don't have control over this. So you are going to see anything you will hear. The moment you are going to hear most of those things, you may see it on social media, you may hear it, you may all of a sudden be with a woman, and then at the end of the day, you have left these women. Then you're going sometime, maybe two times, you check on the social media pages, and you're seeing them. Sometimes they're showing their bodies online. They're showing themselves in knickers. They're showing themselves in with all this kind of. It's like they're exposing their body to the world, something they have never done before. You have got to understand that person has reached self-destruction mode. They have reached the end. They have hit rock bottom, and there's nobody there to absorb that level of energy. There's nobody they can hide. They cannot confide in and hide those spirits anymore. So those spirits are now manifesting to the surface. You have been with the narcissist for the last 10 years. All of a sudden, you see in their social media pages, or you hear from somebody, they have caught them stealing money in the bank. Or you hear something, they have caught them with a kid who is underage. Or even sometimes you can hear, they have caught them in the shootout. There was a shootout and they caught them with a weapon. You have got to know that narcissist has reached self-destruction mode, and their end is very near. That is why most of the cases, people in my videos, I've made it very clear. You live in narcissist people, you have got to stay very far away from them. Do not be attempted for whichever reason to look backwards. Do not be attempted, people, when you have left the narcissist. Do not be attempted. Never think about it to look backwards, because people, you are going to face all these things. The end result, you don't want to go down with the narcissist. Those people, they are going to go down at some point, and you don't want to be there when they are going down, because it is going to be very hard for you to watch. It is going to be, many people, even sometimes on my page, I've had people who have talked about that their ex-narcissist was shot somewhere. They found them dead in in the bushes. They were shot, or they were murdered even sometimes, or even sometimes they were caught in bed with kids who are underage. Sometimes they were caught in so many different acts. These individuals, they are embodying so many different spirits. Anything you hear somebody say, if you have left those individuals for the last 2-3 years, and you hear somebody tell you something about them, they have caught them in an act, a criminal act of some sort, or even sometimes they have robbed a bank, sometimes they have caught them with a lot of money in their house, they have robbed a bank. Anything, whatever you hear, that is exactly that spirit actually that was fully controlling the nurses, even during the time you were with them. That was the spirit they were hiding. That was actually the covert spirit that was hiding behind them. You were dealing with the covert nurses, and that was the spirit that was embodied. The nurses, that was the spirit they were embodying behind them. That was the strongest of the spirits that was operating behind them. And that spirit now is starting to manifest, is starting to show, because at that point in time, the nurses has reached self-destruction mode. There's nobody to validate them. There's nobody to absorb that level of energy. So the only thing they are left with is themselves looking at themselves, and that thing has got to be exposed. So it has got to come out there, because they have reached rock bottom and there's no going back. And that is exactly a few moments from that situation. It is either two things will happen. One, you might hear that they've been shot dead for some reason, because at some point in time they become very extremely aggressive and extremely angry and extremely in need of supply, in need of fuel. So they went out to find that fuel. In whichever way it was, they had to go out and find that fuel. And somehow they were caught in the act. They could have gotten shot in somebody's house. They could have been, or they could even have been arrested by someone. Most of the cases here, most of them they're in jail, they're in prison. You leave them, and eventually you hear like 2-3 weeks later, they have caught them, they're in jail. They have locked them up in jail. That is because they went out to face their demons. You are not there to combat that level of energy, so they went out to face their demons, and they were caught in the act by the law enforcement, or even sometimes, the worst case scenario, they have been shot in the act. They have been caught in the act and they have been shot by somebody. So most of the cases, that is when you know the nurses has reached self-destruction mode, and you do not want to be that person. You don't want to be the empath in that point. You don't want to be the empath who is going to be in that position whereby you are going to see all these things happening in front of you, especially if you have got children with them. Myself, I had a clear vision at my awakening. I had a clear vision. God showed me exactly what is going to happen to the nurses at the end of the day. I saw everything in my vision. It is one of the reasons why I decided that I'm going to leave this partnership. I'm going to go out and work on myself. And at the end of the day, since this partnership involves children, I'm going to be the only person who is going to stand up for my children. Because at the end of the day, God has already showed me what is going to happen at the end game of the nurses. I already know what is going to happen to them. So, in this video, people, that's what I want to talk about. The nurse is going to self-destruct. It is going to happen. The only thing you're going to find out is when you hear something has happened to them. They have caught them in an act, they have been shot somewhere, there is some bad incident has happened to them. That is when you're going to know that that's actually the spirit that has been influencing them for all this time. Guys, in this video, because the weather is changing at the moment, I would like to know what you have to say in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about this. And let's share together in the comment section below. Let me know from your side. Much love and blessings, people. I hope to get back in touch with you soon. Bless and there's more signing out.